Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you for a new television review. This is going to be of a new pilot, and it's of a series called Big Sky, which is a Star original. Now, in case you don't know what Star is, it's this new service which has been added to Disney Plus, at least in the UK. I'm assuming other parts of the world, but there's been adverts for it on TV, and it's basically added a big bunch of stuff to the Disney catalogue on Plus. So you've got things like Desperate Housewives on there, you've got Atlanta, obviously one of their originals, and like the roadside novels. It's got David E. Kelley's name on it. I'm assuming that's maybe just as a basic producer, like just a name. I don't think he's really had any involvement in the script or anything, but he, of course, did Big Little Lies, The Practice, more recently The Undoing, a lot of different stuff. So it's certainly a prestigious name to have on your credits. But yeah, the setup is that it seems to be going for this sort of quirky, small town Twin Peaks style vibe, along with obviously looking for something more. Well, again, there's like a murder mystery type thing, but going for something, I guess, a dollop of other like genres like action and stuff. The setup is that it's set in this small Montana town, and you get introduced to a bunch of characters. Ryan Philippine is in here as this like ex sort of cop who's now running a private detective agency. He's running it with this woman Cassie. Meanwhile, there's a love triangle going on with him and his ex-wife because he started having feelings for Cassie, started seeing her, and that's caused tension with his ex-wife, who's a friend of Cassie's. But they're running a detective agency, and about halfway through the episode, their daughters get kidnapped. Pair of sisters. They've gone on like a come here. They've gone on a road trip together, and there's basically this crazy trucker named Ronald who he targets them. One of them unwisely decides to challenge him on the road after he like cuts them off. Bit of an ego thing, and that leads to them becoming like a target for him. And we see him earlier in the episode pick up this girl in like a parking lot, thinks she's meant to be a prostitute, and tricks her, and basically he's got a stun gun, and he stuns her, picks her up, and then these two sisters become the next target, and that's going to lead to kind of the case where we find out there's been other examples of this in the local area, as Philippine's character not too subtly says at one point. There's a faction of truckers who are sex trafficking, because of course there are. Of course there are. I mean, that almost sounds like a crazy sort of Twin Peaks style thing from the get go. But anyway, I'm gonna talk full spoilers, but I'll get into like a couple of twists, or the twist at the end, because there are some notable names in this. You've got, as well as Ryan Philippine, you've got John Carroll Lynch, who I guess is the other big name. He plays like the highway patrolman, who essentially he's having marriage problems, and he's the one who appears to be willing to help Philippine out at the end to find the daughters. And he's the other big name. And there's one or two others. The actress playing his wife, Rick's wife, that's the Lynch character. I recognise her as well. One of the daughters I recognised from something as well. So there's a few familiar faces, but the standard of acting is maybe not what you're going to come to this for, because apart from the names, the acting's pretty rubbish, pretty wooden. and it's rubbish, really. And now it could develop into quite entertaining rubbish, and there's quite a good twist at the end, which I'll talk about in a moment. But it's all very on the nose, very sort of generic. As I said, it's definitely hitting you over the head by going for this quirky Twin Peaks sort of vibe, but nowhere near as weird. It sort of has elements of other stuff, like sort of a 90s teen slasher, but a very OTT like 90s teen slasher. So there's some real like turned up to 11 scenes, like the scene where he just Ronald, his name is the trucker who goes after these girls, where when he stuns them with it just goes crazy, like it goes up in sparks. It's the most overactive stun gun you will ever see. And some of his stuff, like in the back of the truck where he has the girls, and they come around and they find this other girl who's the girl he's previously like attacked and picked up. They tried to revive her, and the moment she comes around, they scream like it's the most terrifying thing they've ever seen. And then you get stuff in the back of the truck where Ronald comes back, and they basically tried to trick him, tried to escape. Like there's a little trick where the girl from earlier pretends that she's still unconscious and then like springs on him. But you get all shaky cam sort of stuff going on in the back of this truck. It's very sort of frantic. But there's a bunch of things it's like riffing on and like ripping off. Um, as I said, there's a love triangle sort of plot with the Philippine character, which leads to this over the top sort of cliched sort of bar fight between the two women, between Cassie and his ex-wife. But they're definitely putting the wheels in motion for a love triangle, because later on he sleeps with his ex-wife even though they're now separated. And there's certain dramas going on, like with the Rick character, the cop, and his wife. There's some really terrible dialogue. Like at one point, he talks about Mother Earth, and she says, "Touch me like Mother Earth," which is a line from him from earlier, because he finds this this guy who's basically stuck in the mud. Well, literally, because his car's stuck in the mud, and I guess this is quite a clever scene when you see where it goes later with Rick, because he sort of comes on quite strong with the guy, and I think that's his whole deal, that he is quite sort of nosy about people's business, and he just he starts talking about, you know, sexual type stuff, and what he's actually doing is just like using a metaphor for him to say, go on, get your wheel out, you know, drive on. And he repeats that later, so you can see them setting up like the quirky small town type vibe. um but I think actually a scene like that is quite clever, when you see where it goes later. But to sum up this sort of show, you only have to look at the opening line, is that immediately they get a pandemic reference in, because the opening scene in the diner is one of the worst like opening lines, where you sort of has one of the characters saying, pandemic times, people need love. And that's kind of the whole vibe in a way. There's some very on the nose like musical cues, they really hit you over the head. Some really random one, because the scene in the parking lot where or parking area where he Ronald first picks up the girl, the original girl. They start playing Nancy Sinatra's "These Boots Are Made for Walking," which is really weird. I guess it's to lure you into a false sense of security, because she comes strutting up to his truck flirting. And then there's the sort of twist. The actress actually playing Ronald's mother, I've seen in Desperate Housewives and some other stuff. And that's another thing. I think you've sort of got a psycho type vibe here with almost her, because when we first see Ronald, she's like sort of getting on him about the fact he's 38 and he still lives with her, and you get the impression of this very dominating woman and almost a Norma Bates type thing. So we are talking about very cliche, very sort of derivative stuff here coming. But I guess there's quite a nice twist with Ronald, the fact that he turns out to be, well, the killer slash kidnapper. But the actor's really bad again, and there's some really cheesy on the nose dialogue, like in the scene where he picks up the first girl. But the big twist at the end is then the highway patrol guy, Rick, is actually in on it. He's actually running this ring because he agrees to help out the Ryan Philippine character to find the girls. And now I will say Rick's wife actually gives him shit for leaving because, again, they're having marriage problems, but she literally gives him shit for doing his job. Now, she points out that there's other highway patrolmen, but even so, this idea that he hears about this local guy whose daughters have gone missing and potentially could be kidnapped and in danger, and he decides, as we find out, an ulterior motive, but he decides, sure, I'll go and help him. It's my job, and I'm a concerned citizen. And she's giving him shit for it. Unbelievable. Get a grip, woman. But anyway, he goes off, and that's the twist, and they start talking. And I think this is actually when you, as I said earlier in the episode, where we see how intrusive Ronald is, Rick, and he has this weird sort of vibe. And I guess maybe you could have guessed because it is John Carroll Lynch, he does tend to play these sorts of characters with a darkness sort of lurking beneath them. But so actually that twist did play quite well for me. It might be the highlight of the episode because it ends with him, because they get in the car together, and again he's acting all sort of weird, and he's telling Cody, the name of the Philippine cat, that we're going to meet a bunch of people. They're people I know and like, so be polite, so that sort of thing. So he's acting kind of weird. And then he shoots him, and that's the twist at the end of the episode. Then he's actually the guy running this sort of sex traffic type thing, and he phones up Ronald. Now I'm assuming he's going to be Ronald's dad or something, or maybe he's just running the thing with him. But he says, Ronald, you've really screwed up this time. So actually the twist did land. I'm assuming maybe that's it for Philippine, that maybe he's going to be killed off now. I don't know, maybe he'll survive. But sometimes when you have like a reasonably big name like that they don't want to commit to anything past the pilot. So it's possible it might be a one episode thing for him. Maybe they'll do the thing where his ex-wife and obviously the woman he works with, Cassie, maybe they all have to, get together and actually sort out their differences to try and solve the case and catch up with. I'll give them credit at least for a decent twist at the end, but yeah, it's a bit ropey. I mean, to be honest, if you're asking, is it going to become a new Melrose Place or Dallas, like a classic like that? The chances are 0 to none, I would say, but there's probably some good cheesy enjoyment, and who knows, there might be some good case of the week type stuff, or the case might get more engrossing as it moves on. We'll see. What the hey, I'll be back with more Big Sky soon. Thanks for listening. See you guys soon. Goodbye.